Welcome back. I'm going to show you an example of how to use a texture as reference to go ahead and model. So let's go ahead and open up an example scene here. I'm going to open up the scene called Example Building. Okay, let's going to open this up. So here's a sample. This is from the actual Volume 1 Unity training product we did earlier. And you can see here, this is the wall from the actual scene. And this is a wall that is in the foreground. And it's mainly based on a texture, high resolution texture of this kind of dirty, chipped away, decrepit type of wall or whatever. And we have these windows that are built into the texture. Now, as you can see here in this model, I actually created geometry based on the texture in order to give this thing some depth. That's very important. Whenever you have an object that's going to be close to the player, and the player is going to be able to inspect very closely to his point of view, the camera or whatnot, you want to make sure that those objects have some kind of geometry to them. You don't just want to put a flat texture and then call it a day. That's not what you want to do. That's not going to look very good. So to make things look better, you can combine the two. You can use a good looking texture and also chip in and kind of sculpt in some modeling detail. Just overall, nothing too detailed. Don't waste too many triangles if it's not something important. And this right here is not that important, but it is going to be pretty close to the player. The player can walk up to this, so you want to make sure you have some kind of geometric detail that makes the object kind of pop out and have some depth to it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new one and show you this texture reference modeling technique that could come in pretty useful. Don't use it for modeling your characters or anything very important that way, but it's very useful for doing environment props, particularly backgrounds like buildings and backgrounds that have windows and walls and doorways and stuff that the player's never going to interact with, but it's just in the background, just as environment props. So let's see how we can do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my point snapping is on, which it is. I'm going to deselect everything, and then I'm going to use the Polygon creation tool, and using snapping I'm just going to snap some vertices over here like this and basically create myself a new object, a new polymesh object. I want to make sure that the polygon normals are facing the same way as the wall object in the background. Now let me move this guy a little bit forward like this, and what I need to do is assign the material from this wall over here because it already has the texture and everything. So I'm going to select this object. I'm going to come up here to material and choose assign material. Select this guy. That's going to apply the material to this gray polymesh object. But we don't see the texture. The reason for that is we don't have a texture projection, so I'll jump into property, go to texture projection, and I'm going to give it a planar YZ projection. That's going to go ahead and allow us to see the texture. I'm going to open up the texture editor, and I can do that easily by hitting Alt and the 7 key on the keyboard. And you can see the UVs here just need to be adjusted, so I'm going to select all the UVs. I'm going to go to my planar projection here. I'm going to make sure that maintain aspect ratio and position relative to object are checked on, and then I'll click on best fit. Softimage is smart enough to figure out how the UV should be placed on the object perfectly, and it does a very good job with that. And as you can see, that UV mapping was a breeze. Okay, so I'm going to take this guy here and I'm going to freeze modeling on it to get rid of those texture projections. Don't really need them. Okay, so you can see the way that this one looked. I'm going to hide it for now. I'm going to take this guy here and place him at 0 in the world space there. I'm going to hide the grid as well. And if I look at this object, especially from an angle like this, you can see that the texture looks nice and it's pretty high res, but it looks flat. It's very flat. And this would be great if it was an object that was way, way in the background like this, and the player can never, go over there or look at it closer than this. But if it's something the player can walk up to and get this close and look at it from different angles like this, you're going to have a problem. This just is not going to sell the effect of being a 3D game. Okay, you don't want that. You don't want this billboard effect. So what we can do in Softimage is we can use some powerful modeling tools here to go ahead and model and chip into this object just by using some modeling tools. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's jump to, say, a right view. I'm going to switch over to texture decal mode so we can see the object here and the texture. What I can do here is I can go ahead and go to edge mode and just select the top and bottom edges. Go to my context menu, and I'm going to split edges with split control. And when I do that, I can move these edges over here. So I'm going to basically move one here to that corner right there of the windows. And I'm going to select these edges here. And I'm going to repeat the process. I'm going to bring these edges to about right here is pretty good. I think that's okay right there. I'm going to get a little bit closer, and I'm going to take these edges here, and I'm going to basically do the same thing. So I'm going to make a split, and I'm going to move this split down to about right here. There's like a little windowsill you could see right there in the texture, in the image. I'm going to take this one over here, and I'm going to do another split control. I'm going to place that one about right up there. Okay, so I have that set up. Now what I can do is actually pretty simple. Watch how easy this is. I can continue using split control, but in order to move a little bit faster, I'm going to be using the Add Edge tool. And you can find that if you go over here to the Polymesh menu, Modify Polymesh, make sure you're in the Modeling menu set. Go up here to Add Edge tool, which is the / key on the keyboard. I like using shortcuts. And I'm going to make a cut about right there. Cut that right there. I'm going to make another cut about right there, another cut about right there, and then finally one about right there. Don't worry about being too precise. And then I'm going to use the tweak tool, and I'm going to activate my point snapping or point welding down there, and I'm just going to weld this stuff like this. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to jump back to the camera view. I'm going to jump in here. I'm going to take this polygon, and I'm just going to push it back a little bit. Okay, not too much, just a bit, just to give that window some depth. Okay, and because we don't push it back an extreme amount, which as you can see stretches out the texture, we're just pushing it in a very small amount. And by doing that, the texture stretching is so subtle that it's pretty much negligible. And then what you can do at this point, you can scale out this polygon. So I'm going to switch over to global and turn on COG. Scale up this polygon a bit to square it up a little bit more. And then you can push it as far back as you want. I recommend just a little bit is enough to sell the effect. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is jump back into the right view, and I'm going to use my my Add Edge tool again. Okay. And I can add an edge right here to right there. So now I have this polygon here that I can extrude out to create this windowsill. Now you can see it doesn't match up with the image perfectly. So in order to fix that, you could just come in here and you could take this and just kind of extend this out a little bit like that. And if you want to do that on the other side, you could as well. And just kind of trace it on there, and that'll do a good enough job of getting that done. Now over here we have a little detail, looks kind of like a little block right there. So in order to really sell the effect, any big details like that, say this little window right here, this window, all these big windows, these little kind of blocks that are extruded into the image, you want to take those and you want to extrude those in. That way you can get rid of that flat 2D billboard look and really give this some more depth. So right here what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to edge mode, select those edges there, and I'm going to go to split with split control. I'm going to bring this up to about right, I guess right here is good. I'm going to make another one right here. And actually right here, what I could probably do, I'm just going to use the split edges with split control. It's going to be a little bit easier in this case. So I'm going to put it about right there. Again, I'm not trying to be super precise or picky about where I place this stuff. It's going to look good either way, so I'm going to do that. And then I have this polygon here, which I can then, extrude and do whatever I need to do to it. So in this case, I'm not just going to move it back, because if I move it back, this will happen. That's not what I want. So I'm going to extrude it and push it in just a bit like that. And maybe I'll scale it down just a little bit. Makes it look pretty good. So now we have that in there, and that kind of sells the effect a little bit better. Okay, and you can do the same technique for this window down here as well as this window right there. Okay, so I'm just going to optimize it a little bit more, and I'm going to end this video here. In the next one, we're going to come back to this scene and wrap this up.